Hey, how you doing there again, folks? Me again, of course, Brandon Wenzel, coming back at you with another confession off my Concert Confession series. Folks, Concert Confession series is a vlog series that I've been doing for a little while now, where I go over there and I confess my concert sins, I recount my recreational revelries, I muse over my musical misadventures. Basically, it's just a way for me to go over there and stand at the soapbox and brag about the shows and concerts that I go to, because I'm a big fan of live music. But anyway, whilst I'm doing all that, folks, I am doing something else. I happen to be in my back room today, which means we get Peer Can Thunderbolt poster. Peer Can Thunderbolt poster. Whilst I'm doing all that, I'm doing something that's, pertains to this particular format. I'm wearing a super cool shirt. Folks, when I wear super cool shirts, I always like to highlight the super cool shirt. What super cool shirt am I wearing for today, though? Happens to be my Magnolia Park shirt. Yeah, I love this shirt. It's very cool. If you're unfamiliar with the band Magnolia Park, so was I, up until very recently. I got into their stuff literally just earlier this year in 2025. It timed itself out really well because they were going on tour with a band that I'm a big fan of called South Arcade, and I had that opportunity to go over there and, make that happen, so I started doing a little research and digging into seeing what Magnolia Park was all about, and it turned out they were awesome. And if you don't believe me, well, I actually have some videos of their show that I attended. Those videos are on my channel in case maybe you'd like to check them out. I am a big, big fan of their stuff now. There was one of those things where getting to see them live just like instantly was like, boom, fan base. And if you happen to be interested in their music at all, I'd be happy to point you in the right direction because I think they're an excellent, excellent band. But anyway, what are we talking about today, folks? What are we doing here? Well, this, at the time I'm doing this, is episode number 11, concert number 184. We are getting closer, folks. Getting that close to that 200 of my Concert Confession series. Specifically, this was a tour for the band A Killer's Confession, as well as some accompanying bands that I will remark upon a little bit later. But yeah, AKC were the headliners. They're a band that I've seen multiple times before. I'm a big fan of theirs. So when I saw that, they were going to be performing not too far away from where I live, it was a great opportunity. But I have a little bit of a format that I like to do where I like to go over there and talk about the different aspects of the show and what was going on. And at the end of it, I'm going to go over there and give it a grade and, kind of go over there and just yammer on about stuff. So, let's go over there and let's start this off. I always like to start with the venue in question. So the venue in this instance was a venue I'm very, very familiar with called the WC Social Club. It's out in West Chicago. At this point, I have probably been to more shows at the WC Social Club than I have been to at any other venue. They work really nicely for the type of music that I'm into and kind of the scale of music that I, tend to attend. Because I love going to big shows too, but I'm definitely more of a smaller venue guy, and WC Social Club is like perfect for that. They're like, on top of that, they're, in the suburbs. I don't have to drive into the city. It's a nice, convenient spot. Now, that all said, there have been some slight-ish criticisms, one of which we'll play more into when I start talking about the bands, but they have, as far as I can tell, they've fully adopted a no re-entry policy, and that's fine. It's just a little bit lamentable because for the longest time that was not the case. You were allowed to go over there and, make your way out. This worked nicely for me because a lot of times I like to buy merchandise and stuff like that. I like to go out to my car to go over there and, store that stuff away instead of carrying it on me. And typically they will let you do that at least once, So I'm not complaining too much. I lament the more free-form days before. But I understand why, why they would implement that policy. The venue itself is nice enough. It works out, for the space and for the size show and everything that's going on. I don't have too many issues, but, and again, this is going to tie in with the bands a lot, there were some sound issues. So, let's start talking about the band so that I can bring up said sound issues. So the first band up was a local band called Develin. I'd never heard of Develin before. Um, they were fine. They were a solid opening band. They didn't blow me away. I didn't watch their performance and then immediately run to their merch booth or, decide, oh man, I got to go to every one of their shows. They were a good opener, though. They were competent at what they did. They put on a solid performance. Kudos to one of their, both their guitarists were genuinely really solid. In fact, musically, they all worked really nicely. But I have to give extra kudos to one of their guitarists, because, that dude was just rocking the fuck out. He was putting in all the effort. And it's and I have to applaud that, because, yeah, you're the opener and everything. There's probably not too many people there for you. But at the same time, you're trying to get the audience on your side. You're trying to get them, hyped up for the show. And him more than anybody, he was going for it. Really, the only other sort of critique that I would have in terms of the stuff that was on display, because again, they were a good band. Nothing exceptional, but they did a fine job. The lead singer had kind of an interesting vibe. I sort of wonder if maybe he's not super comfortable being in the lead position on stage, because he was wearing sunglasses and a hat, and when he would talk with the crowd, it was more soft spoken. And let me emphasize, I'm not trying to shit on the guy or anything like that. It was just something notable, because typically when you think of lead singers, you think of very exuberant people, and good at working with the crowd and stuff. I don't know if I'm pegging that right, or maybe he had I was gonna say maybe he had a sore throat or something, but he was belting it out, and he did a fine job as a singer, by the way. But yeah, that was just kind of an interesting thing, because it was just again, even if you're the opener, you're still trying to sort of get the crowd involved, and he did a little bit, but again, it was just very kind of muted. So might be something to potentially work on, and I mean that in a constructive criticism way. Now here's the thing, though, and this was not their fault. Initially I thought it was. I was like, okay, maybe they were the opening band. The sound mixing was terrible. Terrible. The vocals were very hard to hear. And even the instrumentation, when the guitarist would bust out a solo or something, everything seemed slightly off. And it really was off-putting. And again, initially I thought that was more on the band's part of things, but as things went forward, so yeah, that's not a criticism against them, because I fully think that they can go over there and bring it, but yeah, that was just, all things considered though, again, they did a nice job, they were a good opening band. Nothing exceptional, but competent. Moving on to the next band, this was the only band of the night where the vocals seemed kind of on point, and they were another local band called Dejected. Another band I was unfamiliar with. I guess from what the lead singer was talking about, it sounds like the guitarist was the one who basically got the band together and kept it going and stuff, which was really cool. And I have to give extra credit to the guitarist. The man had so much drip in his outfit. He had a custom sort of stylized jersey, and then he had these baggy pants with a lightning design. Look, I'm from the nu metal era, so I appreciate some nice onstage drip, and the guy was looking fly. I'm just saying. These guys were definitely my find of the night. I really enjoyed their set. They were much heavier than Develin was. One thing I did want to mention about Develin real quick, because it kind of falls into play with Dejected as well, although not quite as bad. Remember, folks, when you're coming up with your band name, you want to come up with something that's easy to search for. When I looked up Develin after the show, I had to go through about 6 bands before I got to the one that I was looking for. Dejected wasn't as bad, but I still had to go through about 3 of them. So, I'm just saying. But I really enjoyed Dejected's set. They were heavy. They had great stage presence. again, going back to what I was saying, even if you're one of the opening bands, you're trying to get the crowd on your side. And it was clear that there were people in the audience who were there just for Dejected, which was cool to see. You always love to see, local band have local support. They really fucking killed it. They had some great musicianship. And again, the vocals were actually kind of on point. Sort of. Because the lead vocals were actually okay, but then the backing vocals, which the guitarist was, partaking in, those had that same muted problem as Develin had. So at that point, I began to think maybe it's not the bands, maybe it's the mixing. But other than that, with the exception of, again, just the sound quality being a little bit so-so, I really loved their set. And again, they were definitely my find of the night. They are a band that I would go see again. I don't know if I'd go if they were strictly the headliners and there weren't any other bands that I was familiar with. I don't know that I would go out of my way to see them. But if they were on if they were on a bill with some other local bands that I'm a big fan of, they would definitely be a delight to see. And I would like to grow as a fan of their stuff because my first showing was really cool. So I did enjoy their stuff. There was even a really cute moment where there was this little girl, and the lead singer tried to get her up on stage, but she was a little bit too shy. Eventually, I don't know if he was her parent or if he was, I didn't know how the whole thing went, but somebody who was watching her where they handed her off to him on the stage, and there was this very adorable moment. So it was very cute. Moving on to the third band, this was a band called Artillery and Storm, another local band. Here's the thing, I have sort of mixed feelings about Artillery and Storm because they seemed like really nice people. They did not fit this show, and unfortunately, point for point, I would say that they were kind of the most off-putting of the bands. AKC is not a super heavy band, but they're a heavy band, they're a metal band. Develin weren't super heavy, but they're the openers, and they're a solid enough, hard rock band. Dejected was heavy, they were heavy, so it was okay. Ventana, another band coming up, they were heavy. Artillery and Storm were not heavy. I don't know exactly what their category of music would be. Maybe something along the lines of, I don't know, I don't want to say metalcore. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't really for me. Now I will say this, they had good production, they actually had some nice lighting and stuff like that, which was cool to see. And I do feel like they built momentum as they went on. Starting off, they were a little bit of a drag, and I think they could tell that the audience wasn't exactly on their side. They did bust out some covers, though, and they did gain a few points for me because one of the covers they did was Bite the Hand That Feeds by 9 Inch Nails. 9 Inch Nails is my favorite band. And literally when they hit that one, the drummer just started killing it, right? And I was like, oh, fuck yeah, man, drummer's fucking doing it. And then it kicked in my head, and it's like, oh, I know this drum beat. So they got me singing along with that one. Credit where it was due. And again, I do think as time went by, they picked up. I did also think it was cool they had a mix of male and female vocals. Not for every song, and they would also share vocal responsibilities with, I want to say, the bassist would do some vocals. So there were some cool things going on there. I'm also not going to completely... I'm not going to shit on them anyway, because they were still putting on a nice performance and everything. It, again, just felt like it didn't fit with the rest of the bands. But again, there were issues with the sound mixing. The vocals were not coming through very good. I didn't even fully realize that they were doing the 9 Inch Nails cover until probably about halfway through the first verse. Because again, the mixing issues. So, while I don't think that Artillery and Storm would be a band that I would follow, I would be willing to give them some benefit of the doubt, because again, I'd like to hear them at full force with their vocals and, proper mixing. There might be more to them. But again, it was, even if I'm speaking best case scenario, they were just kind of a weird fit for this show. They just were. Now that said, again, really nice people. The lead singer actually went over there and, specifically pointed me out, gave me a bit of a fist bump for singing along to the songs and stuff like that. And they even gave me a free t-shirt. I mean, it wasn't just me specifically. They gave out another one too, but, they're like, hey, who wants a couple free shirts? And shirt! So, again, they seem like really nice people, so I'm not trying to rag on their band. It just wasn't exactly for me, and I don't think it fit the tone of the show very well. Let's move on to Ventana, though. Now, Ventana was a particular joy for me because, first of all, I love Ventana. They're one of my favorite bands. Secondly, they weren't supposed to be on this show. They were not originally scheduled, and it was a last-minute decision. I didn't even know until I got to the venue. Thing is, almost all the members of Ventana are also in the band AKC. I think their guitarist is the only one who isn't, and even he might have been subbing in, I'm not sure. It didn't make sense for them not to be there, right? You're already there, you've already got the thing. And that was basically the reasoning. When I was talking with the lead singer, when he was at his merch table, he was like, yeah, it just made sense for us to just, And to that effect, I love Ventana, and I love seeing Ventana live, and it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with their set. It was a delightful surprise. Now, I will say this. I saw Ventana perform a few months back. That incarnation of Ventana had a little bit more going for it because at this point they're a 3-piece. At that point they were a 4-piece. And I would really like to see Ventana get back to its core structure because the singer, Stitch, wasn't even originally the singer. He was just the keyboardist. But as members have come and gone and as Stitch is the creative forefront of Ventana. And that said, he does a fine, he's a genuinely really good lead singer and frontman. So I'm not trying to shit on him in that regard. So, but I, like I said, as other members have had other things going on and stuff, they've had to sub in and out people, but it was great. I really liked their set. The mixing was still a problem, though. Again, Ventana's a band that I love. I've seen, multiple times, and there were a few times where they were playing songs that I could sing, almost every single goddamn word, and I wasn't entirely sure until I saw them really got going. So, but it was great to see them. There was nothing I disliked about what they were doing. I really enjoy it. Like I said, I'd like to see them come back together as a core. I'd love another album, but we'll take it. Fuck, man, I got an excellent Ventana show out of surprise Ventana show. So, then finally, let's move on to AKC, Killer's Confession, the band of the hour, a band who I've seen multiple times in multiple incarnations, and I love tremendously. They are a fantastic band to see live, and they are one of those bands where they've gotten better every single time I've seen them. If you're unfamiliar, one of the, probably the most famous namesake aspects of AKC is the fact that the lead singer, Waylon, had previously been one of the lead singers of the band Mushroomhead for many years. After his falling out with that band, he started up AKC. In subsequent years, he has taken on increasingly Mushroomhead-esque elements, more theatrical, with masks and, things that, again, sort of harken back to his time in Mushroomhead, for which he's received both praise and criticism. Some people, look at it as just being like a knockoff. Other people look at it as, being, hey, it's just a really cool alternative to what Mushroomhead is doing these days, since they're very different than they were, however many years ago. I love AKC. And again, I think they've gotten better as time has gone by. Their most recent album at the time I'm doing this, Victim 1, genuinely one of my favorite albums of 2024. I'm super excited for Victim 2. Their set was perfect for that. They played mostly stuff off of Victim 1. They did throw in one or two older ones. There were some ones that I was missing, I have to admit, because as much as I love their new stuff, I don't want them to abandon their old stuff, because I really like some of their old songs too. But at the same time, man, I was totally going along with it. The mixing wasn't as bad for them. They were able to hold it together a little bit better than some of the other bands. But even then, there was a point where Waylon was over there signaling to the sound guy. He's pointing to his mic saying, But at the very least, there was a definitely much better level of clarity to everything. And it was actually really cool. This was the first time I'd seen AKC as a five piece. They actually had two guitarists going on, which was cool. There had been some drama earlier in the year with a couple of members who had left. Uh, I'm not about the drama, I'm about the music, and for me, the music was really good. I thought they were fantastic. They're a badass band that I love. And while the sound element did bring things down a little bit, the performance element was great. I got to go over there and talk a little bit with Waylon after the show over at the merch booth. I have nothing but good things to say about AKC. The one thing I will say is this, and it's cool. I love that they have Stitch from Ventana. He's also part of AKC now. He was also a previous Mushroom member. Could we get JP? He's the bassist, and he's the only other original member of AKC left besides Waylon. Could we get him his own mask and persona? I'm just saying. I think that he deserves that at this point, man. The man has been ride or die, as Waylon himself put it. I think he needs to go over there and get his own mask, an official AKC persona, provided that's something he's interested in. But anyway, those are the bands that performed. Let's move on from that. Where are we on now? The crowd. Crowd was solid. It wasn't amazing in terms of attendance. I would have liked to see more. You know, you always want to see more for the bands you love. But credit where it was due. The crowd was definitely into it, and they were there for AKC. They were there for Ventana. Every time I've seen AKC at WC Social Club, they have gotten bigger and bigger crowds, which is great to see. Because, like, the first couple times I saw them, it was like me and not a lot of other people. So it's great to see them growing and building that fan base. So hopefully that will continue. I didn't have any issues with anybody in the crowd. In fact, I ran into a Facebook friend of mine as well as somebody who I've seen at other Ventana and AKC related stuff. So we got to go over there and chat a bit. All things considered, nice crowd, decent turnout for what it was. Would have been better, you know, a little bit bigger, but nothing to gripe about. Let's quickly talk about the merch and other things that I got. I got 3 shirts. Oh boy. I got boom, Ventana shirt. This is a new design. And it was a rare win for me being a fat guy because I went to the merch booth and I asked the question that I always have to ask. Do you have it in XXL? Because that's my size. And not only did they only have it in XXL, they only had 2 left. So good on me for getting there early and getting my shirt. Also got, boom, yeah, another new AKC shirt. This time featuring Waylon and Stitch. I knew I had to get this one, man. I love this design. It's got a thing on the back. It's so cool. I love it. I love AKC. Always proud to represent their stuff. I also got a free shirt, remember? Specifically from boom, Artillery and Storm. Not a bad design for what it is. It's, you know, a little bit shiny in the decal, but, you know, not bad for what it is. It is a large, which means that I cannot wear it, but it was free, so I'm not going to bitch. Free shirt. It will go in my drawer of shirts that I can't wear. And for people who are like, well, you know, if you just lost some weight. Folks, I haven't been able to wear a fucking large since I was like maybe in early middle school. I could drop 100 pounds from right now and not be able to wear a large. My frame does not work for that. But I am a fat guy, so. I also got, a couple of set lists. Specifically, from Dejected and from Artillery and Storm. One of the stage guys was about to toss them, and I said, hand them off to me. Even went over there and got the Dejected one signed by about half the band, which was very cool of them. So thank you to Dejected, and thank you to Artillery Storm. You weren't my favorite band that night, but you still performed and did what you did. So that's all I got in terms of merch. Let's talk about pros and cons. Give it a grade real quick. Pros, Ventana being there was a huge thing. That like blew me away. That literally made the fucking show for me. Also, A Killer's Confession put on a great set, and I was loving hearing all the Victim 1 stuff. That was fantastic. I got cool merch. Again, fat guy win. That was really cool. I like that. Also, finding Dejected Again, really cool band, and I'm very interested to sort of follow along with them, see what ends up happening with that. Crowd was decent, not amazing, but again, it's an improvement over previous crowds that I've seen, so there we go, we're on the upswing. Cons, the mixing. I cannot emphasize that enough. The mixing was a huge, huge issue, and it brought down the show. And I was not the only person who thought that. There were other people I talked with in the crowd who felt the same way. I like the WC Social Club. Their sound is not the best, but it can certainly be considerably better. I don't know if that was an equipment issue or a personnel issue. I'm not going to point any fingers, but I would hope that that would be resolved. Whatever went wrong with that, please improve on that, WC. If you happen to see this, you probably won't, but because I love your venue, I think that you host some amazing bands. Let's get that sound fixed. And really, other than that, there weren't any real cons. I mean, the three opening, Artillery and Storm, I don't want to put them as a con, but at the same time, they just didn't fit the vibe of the show. Even though, again, very nice guys, and I appreciate the performance they put on. And I say guys, like I said, there was also a girl on stage too. Just overall arching term. But again, in the right circumstance, like if they were on a show with the band Dreamwake, I think that they would have worked really nicely, provided that the vocals were working properly. But with AKC and Ventana, they just felt very out of place. So that all said, what's my overall grade for this one? I'm going to give this one a flat B. Having AKC and Ventana there was huge. And again, Ventana being there as like a surprise thing really made the show, it elevated it a whole other level for me. Ventana or AKC, they're always quality. They're always a great show to see live. I highly recommend seeing them live if you have the opportunity. And I love their set. I thought it was great. Although again, first of all,